I still remember the first day I stepped onto the damp cobbled streets of London, when the harbour mist clung to every building like a ghost unwilling to leave. The year was 1858, and I had arrived with little more than a small trunk of possessions, a few coins in my pocket, and a mind brimming with ambition. The port was alive with chaos, the creaking of ships, the shouting of dockworkers, the scent of salt and tar thick in the air. Every corner seemed to hide a secret, every shadow promised opportunity or peril. I had come to London to make my mark, to carve a life out of the roaring ambition of this city. My family, modest merchants back in Norwich, had always warned me of the dangers that awaited a young man far from home, yet nothing in their cautionary tales could have prepared me for what awaited me that evening. It was a cold, damp twilight when a messenger found me near the East India docks, a sealed envelope clutched tightly in his hand. He wore a nondescript coat, the type that drew no attention, yet there was an undeniable weight to his presence. His eyes, dark and calculating, lingered on me for a moment too long. "For you, Master Thorne," he said simply, and handed me the envelope. Then, as quickly as he appeared, he melted back into the fog. I tore it open. The parchment was thick, of the sort imported from India, its surface faintly perfumed with something unfamiliar, spicy yet sweet. The letter contained an offer and order for a shipment of opium from the colonies in the East, a rare and precious consignment meant for the hands of discreet clients in the city. The reward promised was generous, almost too generous. And yet, there was a warning, neatly tucked at the bottom in flowing script: "Not all that glitters carries fortune. Some packages contain more than they seem. Exercise caution, for curiosity can be costly." Curiosity. That one word struck me deeper than any warning could. I was young, perhaps foolish, certainly ambitious, and my mind swirled with possibilities. Who were these clients? What was so dangerous about a shipment of opium? And yet, I felt the stirrings of something more, a thrill, a pulse of excitement that promised adventure and wealth beyond my imagining. By the time I returned to the small inn, where I lodged near the docks, the fog had thickened, swallowing the streets whole. Gas lamps flickered weakly against the night, casting long shadows that seemed to lean closer with each step I took. I placed the letter carefully on the desk, the paper trembling slightly beneath my fingers. My eyes traced the words again, absorbing their meaning, and somewhere deep inside, a quiet voice whispered that this would be the first choice that might define the rest of my life. The shipment arrived 2 days later. I remember the knocking at the door, sharp and insistent, followed by the quiet murmur of a man's voice. The crate was heavy, bound with iron straps and smelling faintly of spices, earth, and the bitter bite of something stronger, almost intoxicating. As I ran my fingers over the rough wood, I felt a shiver not entirely unpleasant creep along my spine. I had handled many goods before: silks, teas, rare woods, but this was unlike anything I had ever touched. I pried open the crate carefully, revealing its contents: small, tightly wrapped packets of opium, each emitting a heady, almost hypnotic scent. The aroma was intoxicating even before I touched the powder inside. I knew, or at least I thought I knew, the value of what lay before me. This was opium of a quality rarely seen in London, imported from the farthest reaches of the East Indies. A single packet could be sold for a fortune, yet the warning from the letter lingered in my mind. And then, against all reason, I found myself tipping a small portion into a spoon, testing it not for sale, but for myself. I hesitated only a moment before setting it aflame, inhaling the smoke carefully, as one might savor a rare wine. The effect was immediate, subtle at first, a warmth spreading through my chest, an easing of all tension in my limbs, a softening of the world around me. I sank into the chair, my eyes half-lidded, and the room transformed before me. Shadows stretched and danced against the walls, taking on shapes of forests I had never seen, rivers I could not name, and figures clothed in the garb of distant lands. I could hear faint whispers, foreign and melodic, as if the very air carried stories from across oceans. The misty streets outside became a river of silver light, and I felt as though I were drifting away from London entirely, transported to a world both terrifying and beautiful. Yet, amid this dizzying pleasure, a sense of unease began to creep in. The letter's warning returned to me. Curiosity can be costly. I realized, for the first time, that this substance held more than mere intoxication. It was a key, perhaps to a door I was not ready to open. The allure of power, knowledge, and mystery tugged at me insistently, whispering that one more taste, one more inhalation, would reveal truths beyond ordinary human experience. By the time the smoke cleared and I forced myself to rise, I knew something had shifted. The opium had not only touched my senses, it had touched my mind. And somewhere deep within, I felt a hunger awakening, a quiet, dangerous curiosity that would not be easily sated. The shipment was meant for clients, yes, but I realized I had begun a private affair with the substance, one that could consume me if I allowed it. I sealed the crate once more, though I knew the temptation would not be denied. In the days to come, I would have to navigate not only the streets and alleys of London, but the strange and potent currents now stirring within myself. And I understood, with a cold clarity, that this was only the beginning. It was in a small, dimly lit room above a tea house in Whitechapel that I first saw her, the woman who would change everything. She was unlike anyone I had ever encountered, dressed in flowing silks of deep crimson and midnight blue, her face partially veiled with a thin, gauzy cloth. Even through the veil, her eyes seemed to peer straight through me, measuring, understanding, and judging in a single glance. "You have the shipment," she said softly, almost as if speaking aloud might summon danger. Her voice carried the cadence of the East, melodic yet unyielding. "And you have indulged." I nodded, uncertain whether to speak or remain silent. Something about her presence made hesitation seem both wise and foolish at once. She gestured for me to sit, and I obeyed, feeling a magnetic pull I could not resist. "That opium," she continued, "is more than a commodity. It carries knowledge, memories, powers from lands far away. It can bring fortune, insight, even visions of what others dare not see. But it can destroy as easily as it elevates." I swallowed hard. Her words stirred something inside me, a mixture of fear, awe, and a dangerous curiosity. "And who are you?" I managed, my voice small compared to the weight of her gaze. She tilted her head slightly, as if considering whether I was worthy of the answer. "I am a guide, a guardian of what you hold, Edward Thorne. That package is no ordinary cargo. It contains secrets of the East, and it must never fall into the hands of those who seek power for cruelty or profit." Her warning was clear, yet she offered a proposal that I could not ignore. Help her ensure that the opium reached only those who would respect its origins, keep its secrets, and maintain balance between the trade and the hidden knowledge it carried. In return, she promised insight into the mysteries the opium could reveal, visions of distant lands, whispers of hidden wealth, and perhaps even glimpses of truths beyond ordinary life. The offer was intoxicating. I had always believed in commerce as the path to wealth and status, yet here was an opportunity that promised something far greater: knowledge, adventure, perhaps even a kind of forbidden wisdom. My pulse quickened, my imagination alight with visions of exotic ports, hidden temples, and untold riches. But alongside this thrill, a shiver of fear ran down my spine. I was aware, for the first time, that I was being drawn into something far beyond mere trade. The weight of responsibility pressed on me, yet I felt powerless to resist. The temptation had taken hold. The streets of London at night are a different world entirely. Fog rolled in thickly, muffling sound and softening the harsh outlines of buildings. Gas lamps cast weak pools of light, barely enough to keep the darkness at bay. And yet, I felt the eyes of the city upon me, shadowed figures following, waiting, calculating. I had barely left the tea house when I realized I was being watched. Figures slipped from alleys, shadows that moved with unnerving purpose. The opium in my possession had drawn attention, had never anticipated rivals, spies, and perhaps men who served no master but their own greed. Each corner I turned seemed to hide potential threats, every echo a warning. I ducked into a narrow alley, my heart pounding, senses heightened. The fog seemed almost alive, curling around me, whispering secrets I could almost understand. I could hear the faint, metallic clink of boots on cobbles, the soft murmur of voices just beyond comprehension. My mind reeled not only from fear, but from the lingering effects of the opium. Its scent clung to me, pulling my thoughts into strange, vivid dreams even as I ran. And then, just as suddenly as it had begun, the pursuit ended. I emerged onto a quiet, deserted wharf, the black waters of the Thames stretching endlessly before me. The city behind me remained cloaked in fog, as though hiding its machinations from any unwary traveller. I placed the crate down carefully, trembling as I did. My hands shook, partly from adrenaline, partly from the lingering intoxication that had become a constant companion. In that moment, I understood the full weight of what I carried. The shipment was no longer mere cargo. It was a key to wealth, power, knowledge, and perhaps ruin. The temptation to explore its mysteries, wild with the instinct to survive, to remain untangled in the deadly games of men who sought to control the East's secrets for themselves. As dawn approached, I realized I had made a choice, whether consciously or not. I would not be a passive merchant. I would delve into the mysteries of the opium, guided by the woman's cryptic knowledge. But I would also have to navigate the perilous streets of London, avoiding those who would use the cargo for purposes far darker than mine. The fog of the Thames enveloped me as I watched the first light of day struggle against the night. I was caught between desire and fear, curiosity and caution, ambition and survival. And I knew, with a clarity that chilled me, that there would be no turning back. The opium and the secrets it carried had chosen me as much as I had chosen it. Days bled into nights as I navigated the streets and backrooms of London, the fog a constant companion and enemy alike. I delivered portions of the opium to those deemed worthy by the woman's judgment, but always with a watchful eye. Every transaction felt like a high-stakes performance on a stage where the scripts were improvised, and the consequences could be fatal. But the city had a way of revealing truths I was not prepared to confront. Whispers reached me. Men had noticed unusual shipments passing through docks, strange arrangements among the wealthy merchants, the subtle hand of someone orchestrating more than simple commerce. Shadows followed me, subtle and unrelenting, as if the streets themselves had learned to spy. It was on a night heavy with mist, and the distant tolling of the Big Ben bell that I felt the first real bite of fear. Footsteps echoed behind me, deliberate and synchronized, and I knew that I had been found. Turning a corner, I caught sight of a man whose eyes glimmered with calculated malice, dressed in the black coat of a city inspector, but moving with the precision of a trained operative. "They know," I whispered to myself, heart hammering. The weight of the crate in my hands seemed suddenly unbearable, not because of its physical burden, but because of what it represented: knowledge, temptation, and danger intertwined in a knot too complex to untie. I ducked into an abandoned warehouse, dimly lit by flickering lanterns, hoping to evade pursuit. There, waiting like a wraith between the shadows, was the woman from the tea house. Her eyes, piercing and unreadable, met mine. "Edward," she said softly, yet the words carried an authority that silenced my panic. "You are deeper in the web than you realize. There are men who would kill to possess this shipment, and others who would sell their souls for it. You must choose your path carefully, for one misstep will cost more than wealth or life. It could cost your very essence." Her words cut through the haze of fear and lingering opium. I realized then that I was no longer merely a participant. I was a pawn, yes, but also a player in a game whose rules were invisible yet absolute. And in that moment, I understood the true power of the substance I had so carelessly tasted. It was a mirror of desire, a lens through which men's greed and weakness could be revealed, manipulated, and exploited. The dawn broke cold and pale over the Thames, painting the fog in hues of silver and grey. I stood on the edge of the dock, the crate at my feet, trembling as much from the chill as from the decisions that lay before me. The city had awoken around me, but it was a city I no longer recognized, not in the cobbled streets, the merchants' cries, nor the fog that wrapped the harbour like a shroud. The woman approached silently, her steps light yet purposeful. "Edward," she said, "the choice is yours. Keep the opium for personal gain, succumb to its lure and wealth, or release it into the hands of those who will honor its power and secrets. The consequences are irreversible." I closed my eyes, recalling every shadowed alley, every whispered promise, every intoxicating moment the substance had granted me. I felt the pull of temptation, the seductive promise of riches and forbidden knowledge, almost irresistible. Yet beneath it all, a quiet, insistent voice of reason, perhaps survival, perhaps conscience, surged me toward restraint. Finally, I opened my eyes. The crate, the symbol of my desires, my fears, my ambition, lay before me. With deliberate hands, I lifted it and cast it into the murky waters of the Thames. The wood struck the water with a muted splash, and the ripples spread outward, carrying away not only the opium, but the temptations and dangers it embodied. The woman watched silently, her gaze inscrutable, before she finally nodded. "You have chosen wisely," she murmured. "Many would not have," and just as suddenly as she appeared, she vanished into the morning mist, leaving me alone with the city and the weightless relief of my choice. One remained there for some time, listening to the river, watching the fog dissipate, realizing that I had survived not merely by caution or cunning, but by understanding the delicate balance between desire and consequence. London continued its endless rhythm, unaware of the quiet drama that had unfolded along its docks. And I, Edward Thorne, knew that the choices I had made that night would remain with me forever, lessons etched not in ink or stone, but in the very fibres of my being. The fog lifted, the city awoke, and I took my first unburdened steps into a new day, a day free of opium, free of shadows, yet richer in wisdom than any fortune I could have imagined.